Alright, time for some more illogic. Last time we faced off against our good buddy Steve Chuck and his Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Please go check out that video first if you have not done so already, because you do not want to miss what could ultimately be the battle of the season. We went over the team builder in battle, in which, spoiler alert, your Buffalo Bouffalant finally got another win against the Wobbuffets, a thrilling 1-0 victory carried by Stealth Rock, Pissimian Aerodactyl, and a dazzling debut from Guzzler, leaving us with a 3-1 record and a +9 differential heading into the bye. This time we've got our Week 5 matchup against Fish and his Cleveland Castforms. Timestamps will be in the description. Matt has been a mainstay in the league and after a couple seasons off is back with his particular brand of Pokemon. We've had consistent success against him, notably a scrafty setup against him in Season 4. We actually fell to him in his G-Max Lapras in a very tough for us Season 5, dropping to our worst finish in the league after that. Things like that G-Max Lapras embody his playstyle, definitely more defensive and control-oriented compared to other coaches, and his team yet again embodies that. At the top, we've got a Alolan Dugtrio, then a bunch at 100. We've got the Miltank, the Galarian Mr. Mime, and the Regigigas, if that really counts. Down to Phalanx, Flapple, Diancie, Vikavolt, Gastrodon, Cursula, and Pyukumuku. Lots of really cool mons sprinkled throughout, including Alolan Dugtrio, who I used well in Season 4, and Vikavolt, which I've used multiple times, winning in Season 6 of this league, as well as netting me second place in one of my earliest draft leagues, where we won Pokemon through auction. Otherwise, though, what stands out to me most positively on his team is that ridiculous defensive core he's got, with Recover Gastrodon, Roost Vikavolt, Milk Drink Miltank, and the stupidly bulky Diancie. It's so tough to hit even two of them with a very strong neutral hit, and good luck with super effective coverage because it will be covered. We don't really have anything with stabs that hit most of his team hard. The coverage and other options will be critical to our success. On his side, Pyukumuku sure is a Pokemon. Aside from Toxic and the counter moves, I don't really see what it's going to be doing to me, and considering the sheer power on my team, plus the ability to chip it properly around recover, I don't really foresee this being too much of an issue. Regigigas sure is a mon too, really funny with how big and strong and bulky it is, but slow start really ruined it, huh? We've got a healthy amount of fighting coverage for it, not to mention just straight power, and once again, other ways to bring its health down safely. Miltank is actually somewhat similar, obviously a bit stronger and faster at first, but more importantly with Milk Drink to sustain and Heal Bell for the toxic strategy I've been dancing around saying for a bit. But I have a silly amount of fighting coverage for the cow, plus raw base stats that should help me rip through this and others a little more easily, not to mention plenty of other tricks up my sleeve to handle this in particular. I'm not too worried, even if Thick Fat is annoying for my ice types. I love my Alolan Dugtrio, but again, I'll have to pass. Strong stabs, but I can pretty easily just take a hit with anyone and KO it right back. I'm usually worried about mons like this when they can out-trade me, but even if Dougie is going to get a hit off, I would have to be low enough for that hit to KO, and even then, like, it could be annoying if it comes into Revenge KO a couple times, but at that point, I'm low already, it's not a big deal. Finally, I actually deal with Diancie super well with this team. Multiple steel types and rock resists actually make for a great time, all the better that those are the mons I'm looking at bringing this time. Even without a grass type, I've got relatively strong super effective coverage, stab, or otherwise to once again be able to out-trade this with relative ease, though Iron Defense and Body Press could get very annoying. So the 6 I'm most scared of will start with Flapple, as would make sense when I have 2 grass resists and 0 fairy types for his Hustle boosted dual stabs. This is something that can definitely out-trade me with really neat move options to whittle me away in an offensive manner. Galarian Mr. Mime fits that mold too, even if the coverage isn't quite as good. Freeze Dry plus Focus Blast is ridiculous, while also better outspeeding a couple of my bulkier answers than Flapple could. Cursula is the strongest of these, and if I focus too heavily on special offense, this is actually a little bit tricky to even 2-hit KO. I absolutely need to focus on making sure I have physical offense solely for this and the Mr. Mime. Phalanx has constantly let me down with facing better mons, but down here in low tiers, it has a real chance. +1 to all stats is something I can achieve a little more freely in this environment, not to mention how great fighting coverage is in general, not just down here, but against me too. Throw in a bit of coverage and the ability to get that +1 in the defensive stats against generally slower sets, and this could actually be a bit of a problem. Gastrodon is obviously difficult to break through without Grass Stab, meaning I have to resort to those strats I mentioned earlier of random coverage, very strong moves, or Toxic, but Gastrodon is more annoying to deal with. Recover has more power points, Toxic is more likely to come from it, Skeleton can burn, and I have to find out if it's going to be impossible to break it on the physical or special side quickly, depending on his investment. Finally, Vikavolt is my boy for a reason. Strangely, only a couple of weaknesses on a bug type, plus surprising bulk and roost. This is his only ground immunity as well as one of his only fighting resists, making those types that much less spammable, with coverage for it being a little sparse on my team. Base 145 special attack should not be underestimated either, meaning even if it forgoes Sticky Web, a set with stabs, roost, and maybe a coverage move like Energy Ball could rip a hole in any member of my team. For me, Clang is on the bench again. Not trying to explain it, but even though it's immune to Toxic and has a setup move, steel coverage against him is actually pretty awful despite the DNC, though another rest talk set with Toxic was actually a little bit interesting. I'm actually benching Tentacruel for the first time this season too. It's another Toxic immunity on the bench against a bulky team. Spinning does not appear to be a priority against him, and Tentacruel's breaking capability in the matchup consists entirely of Toxic and maybe a stray Scald here or there. Its attributes such as speed combined with Scald and a poison typing on a special wall isn't particularly valuable here, so Tentacruel to the bench. Guzzlord will take rest after carrying the endgame last week. It has a couple of outstanding matchups, but again just barely lacks the coverage I was looking for, not to mention it being weak to threats like Mr. Mime, Phalanx, and Flapple that I do not want to give even more damage than I can afford to give up. Frostlass is next. Even with that speed stat and a much better matchup against most of those offensive threats in particular, it doesn't really do much to the bulky ones. It could have some uses a bit of a bulkier fast mon like Tentacruel, but again those attributes aren't particularly great in the matchup, and more so I have other mons that can deal with both the bulky and offensive threats due to their particular merits anyways. Finally, again coming to the last couple mons for the slot, but I decided to leave behind Clawitzer. It was a nice run towards the top of the KO board, but it's a long climb now, and instead of trying to force KOs against things like Gastrodon, who's immune to Water Pulse, or Vikavolt, who KOs me back, or getting outsped by Freeze Dry, or Grab Apple, which are super effective as well, I think I can bring the other 6 for a slightly better time. We've admittedly got a bit of a straightforward team here for the Bouffalant, but it's still worth it to go through and see why I made some of the decisions I did. Aerodactyl, for example, really just needs that max speed for +1 Flapple and coverage of dual stabs and Earthquake to cover basically everything I wanted. I had a cool few options for the last move, including Hone Claws, which I really was thinking about seriously, but ultimately decided on Toxic as a way to potentially help break through things like Gastrodon in particular. Laying a fat Toxic on things like Miltank, Pyukumuku, Diancie, Regigigas, Vikavolt. His team is begging me to click Toxic, so I will oblige. Wasn't sure on an item, so I figured Wide Lens could help me hit the 3 moves that aren't perfect accuracy a little better, Stone Edge going up to 88%, and Dual Wing Beat plus Toxic at 99%. It's nice to have that insurance, so it should come in handy even if the effect isn't immediately seen. Next is going to be this Steelix, very similar to what we had in week 3, but with Protect over Iron Defense. Body Press's fighting coverage is so good, Heavy Slam covers basically everything else we need to cover, especially that Cursula, and Toxic is once again just the ideal option to help against things like Gastro. Protect is natural synergy with that too, as well as with leftovers that we may need to use to get back up to full for Sturdy, which we've talked about previously, just in case we need to tank a hit in the worst case scenario. Next is going to be this Mesprit, and this is where it gets a little bit funky perhaps. Expert Belt turns quite a few 2-hit KOs into 1-hit KOs on the physical side, which is my main area of investment for the awesome coverage provided mainly by Fire Punch. Zen Headbutt is also a nice stab for Phalanx, of course. Knockoff makes a lot of sense for things like Cursula and the Mr. Mime Galar that could become, and this is really my best answer for that in general. And then Energy Ball, despite having 0 investment in a minus special attack nature, still hits all Gastrodon for over half. So this is kind of a cool offensive piece, a stopper for most anything he may bring that's a little bit out of control, especially considering it's outspeeding everything from Phalanx and below. Guaranteed to bring something low at least, and that may be all that I need. Pessimian will provide the rest of my grass coverages. We've got another Scarf set this time for +1 Phalanx, as is necessary. And then we also have the grass coverage, which is very important with Seed Bomb. Really like the cool little option there for Gastrodon. Otherwise, it's a lot of straightforward, simple moves with close combat, looking just incredible in the matchup. So I'm not really concerned about fighting a chance to just click buttons. Even if Vikavolt looks like a pretty nice answer for it, I could U-turn or knock off spam a little bit early in the game instead. Rotom-Frost is coming back now too with a sort of defensive set meant to get rid of rocks. I didn't actually bring Hazards this week, and as Tentacruel was gone, I went with Toxic on Arrow, and I decided to make room for Boots and Defog on the Rotom this week as a result. A nice change of pace for it, while still providing my 3rd Toxic user and another maybe bona fide answer to Gastrodon depending on its set. Volt Switch is my other piece of momentum on the team, with Blizzard being my nuking move of choice, of course. The real piece, though, to speak about for the team is what has gone unsaid this whole time, and that is going to be Marowak, the last mon to make its debut. I know it may look like a bit of a throwaway mon, but I think this is exactly the team to let it put in the work. This is the squad that will let me show off what Marowak can do. Marowak's offensive stats is so funny, and against many slow defensive threats, Marowak will be punching holes. It looks like you don't believe me. Well, how about some calcs? That fully physically defensive Gastrodon we're worried about? 2-hit KO'd. And outsped. Fully physical defensive Pyukumuku? 2-hit KO'd. And outsped. And 100% walled with Substitute. Vikavolt without investment has a chance to be OHKO'd by Fire Punch, and if he is using the same Vikavolt set he has been, he will be outsped with this speed investment. These were really the only 3 moves that I knew I wanted, so I tossed Focus Punch on there for funsies, but it was honestly more so a way to just have a strong neutral move to KO things like Flapple or the normal types if needed. I figured there will be plenty of opportunities to get the substitute up against some things, and if so, we can just take advantage of it to go to town. Morak absolutely slaps. Should outspeed about half of his team too, so just a little bit of chip or an opportunity to sub a substitute may be all that we need to break his team apart, especially with defog support from Rotom for those sticky webs if needed. Guzzlord and Klotz are low tier mons that KO'd half my opponent's team on their debuts. Let's see if Marowak can follow suit. I thought this may happen. Fish has been bringing the same 6 mons to start the season each of the first 4 weeks, so in the second half, we've got Gastrodon as overlap, but otherwise the other 5 mons have come now too. Well, no Vikavolt, and seeing things like Regigigas and Pyukumuku is encouraging, but I know I'm going to be paranoid about forgetting something. That's fine, so what am I worried about? Well, for a lead, Miltank is a solid rock setter, so Passimian doesn't KO. If only I'd been adamant, but I really wanted to be able to outspeed +1 Phalanx and +1 Flapple, or be able to outspeed them after getting hit with the sticky webs, which could be important. Next best thing is probably to get Chip off with my other pivoter, Rotom-Frost, and go right out into it. I've got several rock resists, so it actually shouldn't be too much of an issue to let them up for a bit, but we can play safely too. We'll do the Rotom lead. Best of luck to Fish, as we are correct one more time about the leads. The streak continues. I'm cool with doing the expected play I mentioned before. We're just going to go ahead and do it. Volt Switch 21%, and we're just going to go right into Passimian to immediately threaten the cow, only get hit by a Toxic. That's kind of interesting, as we see leftovers as well. And Toxic before setting up rocks. That's fine. Actually makes enough sense to me to wear down Rotom. This could be a free invitation to Cursula, but I don't know if he'd be willing to take that risk, and I don't know if I want to be bluffing and let Miltank get off more than it should be able to. So I think just the straightaway play of Close Combat. We're going to do that right away into the Gastrodon, and yep, this one is fully physical defensive. That makes a lot of sense to me, honestly. Passimian is way too important to get chipped down like this right now, so away we go into Mesprit. On the recover, that makes a lot of sense. Yep, Energy Ball should still be doing a ton. Bam! That is a lot of damage. Ice Beam back should do minimal damage, and yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. Mesprit was about to shine, so we're going to need to do something to suppress that immediately, aren't we? That's fine. I don't mind going back into something that can threaten to KO this after a recover. Well, actually, Passimian's I think is the only one that fits the bill again. So, loath as I am to risk it taking any more damage than it already is, we're just going to swap right back out into it, nonetheless. And into Cursula. Interesting. Well, that makes sense, the way to threaten Mesprit for sure, if it were to thaw. Man, if I hadn't been frozen, we could have gone right into knockoff. Actually, let's knock off right now. Let's just KO the physically frail Cursula and give us these early 6-5, then get rid of the choice specs too. Passimian always comes through, man. I don't think I've been disappointed by it yet. Well, the response we keep getting ticked away by poison will be the Phalanx. Very interesting. Admittedly, very scary. He actually found the perfect time to set up the no retreat or just fire away, as I'm locked into knockoff. Or otherwise, I'm going to be taking a lot of Toxic Chip even if I weren't locked in. Unfortunately, I'm not really seeing an opportunity for Mesprit while it's frozen. So I think that's just going to have to be the play. Zen Headbutt. Oh, that's even better than taking a CC. And it's Life Orb as well. That'll help tremendously to chip it into range of some moves like Earthquake or Close Combat. Let's see. Probably Throat Chop would be next, right? I don't resist with anything but the chip Passimian. No, we can do better than that. I think we can make a little bit more aggressive double into Aerodactyl. It's a bit aggressive, but I like it. Ooh, the Pyukumuku. I don't mind that at all. Of course, this is the part of the game where I failed to recognize what it is exactly that Pyukumuku does. I think I mentioned in Teambuilder that Pyukumuku uses counter moves. It turns out as annoying, but Unaware is the more common ability for sure, which pairs real well with the Toxic set it commonly runs too. I know a little bit about it, but not enough obviously. So it's going to go ahead and lay down a block into me while I lay down a Toxic. Man, Rotom really was the play here, wasn't it? The ability to Volt Switch out while setting Toxic anyways? I wish I had Taunt and Arrow now, but I loved the rest of its coverage, and Toxic was supposed to help against other stuff too. That's fine. It's fine. We've got Stone Edge too. Stone Edge is doing, that's it, man, a bit, while I get Toxic right back. I should be winning this fight though, or maybe potentially with Recover stalling me out. That's fine. Even if as I got soaked to lose a stab on my Stone Edge, the last one did 29%, so I think we should be fine. Soak is sick, and yep. 12% occurrence thanks to the wide lens. And then, of course, the other issue is going to come right here because the recovery move of choice is going to be Rest. Yeah. Well, very similarly to losing Obstagoon in the regular season finale of Season 8, it looks as though I'm going to be sacking another 100-point Mon to a little gimmick Mon. It may have been a roll to KO with Stone Edge after losing Stab, but it sure looks like we had a good chance to do it. That really is a shame. Pyukumuku is, I'm going to admit, pretty cool Mon. 18% there. We see it as kind of a roll. Maybe didn't matter as much anyways. 21%, who knows what the roll was there exactly, but I like Pyukumuku overall. It's really cool. That Soak does also mean that Steelix isn't an answer to it as well, so we're actually running a little bit low on Pyukumuku answers because I just didn't bring Taunt, I suppose. It's a shame, too, that Aerodactyl is going down like this of all things. One of our kill leaders at 5 KOs, but like Obstagoon in that aforementioned match, we do at least do our part to force it to click Rest again on the final turn of Toxic, ticking away at our life total. Sorry, Aerodactyl. However, your sacrifice will not be in vain, because it's time to start clicking buttons. Marowak, this is the most free substitute of your life. Sub up on the swap to Regigigas. Oh, buddy. I have some bad news for you. This goes out to that choice band Hitmonchan from week 1. T-Wave doesn't do anything, obviously. Blam! Marowak, Oko's the legend with the substitute still up. Easy pickings for the Whack, who is ready to feast again. Failing Sin next, fair enough. First impression obviously breaks this up, but the EQ is the easy follow-up to give Marowak another KO. 5-3. Unfortunately for him, he then picks Gastrodon. Oh man, I've got the speed investment. I'm telling you, we're doing 55-65. EQ's going to claim another one. As Marowak lives up to the other low tier's hype with 3 KOs in its debut. Sorry, Clang. Sorry you couldn't live up to this. 5-2, he actually goes into Miltank. So, strangely enough, I did mention I don't have the best ways to deal with Pyukumuku. That means I'll actually need to save Substitute Marowak for later as my guaranteed way to beat that. So for now, I'm just going to go into Steelix, which will take that Toxic with absolute ease. Toxic ticking away at Marowak is the only possible way I lose, so this switch was just to guarantee the victory at the end. It's made even easier when we trade Seismic Toss for Body Press, and I definitely outdamage Miltank with the big steel body of Solid Snake. It's going to be an easy 2-hit KO, of course. Could have protected for lefties as well, which is nice. And then with Pyukumuku sleeping for 2 more turns, thank you to Arrow for forcing that out. I think we know where this is going. Go to Marowak on turn 1 of Rest, Substitute on turn 2 of Rest, and with no attacking moves, we can leisurely click Earthquake 2 more times to complete the 5-0 victory over the Castforms. GG to Fish, but there are few who can stand up to the awesome might of Marowak. I'm telling you, I wish I could bring Marowak more often. I love this thing. But this was the matchup where it realistically was putting in this kind of work, where it was able to outspeed plenty of Mons, and that ground coverage was amazing. Maybe there'll be other teams coming up here with a slow enough Mons to prey on. But on the other hand, maybe not. This was reminiscent of week 1, a low-tier Mon getting 4 KOs, along with Steelix and Passimian getting 1 each, and every team member participating in at least some passing way. That said, it's tough to say anybody but the GOAT Marowak deserves MVP. What a fun Mon to use, for sure. That'll wrap it up for us. We've made it to a 4-1 start with a plus 14 differential, lots of 1s and 4s there. That makes things a lot less stressful than last season, where at the same time we had just dropped what should have been an easy W to drop to 2 and 3. We managed to recover that season up to 4 and 4, ensuring we continued our streak of finishing at least 500 in every draft season, but we've clinched that this time just 5 weeks into the 8-week season instead of on the final week. That's a very good thing too, is the final 3 weeks are absolutely stacked, so we've got to be at our best if we want to grab a top seed. The biggest test of the regular season is next time, Week 6 against the undefeated Newport Noctowls. He was undefeated when we brought him down last season in Week 7. That ended up being his only loss in the entirety of Season 8. The Bouffalant are the only team that seemed to be able to defeat him, and he'll have to overcome us again this time if he wants to complete this attempt at the 3rd undefeated regular season Wooper Club draft history. We'll see you then.